Hi everyone, welcome to our channel. In a recent statement, McGregor expressed deep concern over what he perceives as a lack of professionalism among high-ranking German military officials. He suggests that over time, American influence has infiltrated German military leadership to the detriment of their own standards. McGregor criticizes the apparent lack of clarity in communication and decision-making, particularly regarding military involvement and cooperation. He highlights the importance of transparency in such matters, emphasizing the need for senior officers to clearly convey the implications of their actions to the government. He believes the first issue lies in the presence of numerous technicians in civilian attire on the Ukrainian grounds, predominantly British or American, with uncertain numbers from other European nations. He expresses surprise at the potential involvement of Germans, though recent remarks from the German Chancellor indicate their likely withdrawal if present. He asserts with confidence that missile provision to Ukrainians is unlikely. He suggests that Scholz's actions stem from electoral pressure against involvement in the Ukrainian conflict. He anticipates that the German government will now enhance its oversight of such. Macron, on the other hand, seems to be mirroring the United States' historical use of special operations forces without thorough consultation or transparency. This pattern has persisted since the 1960s, and Macron's emulation reflects a desire to assert significance on the global stage despite France's diminishing relevance. Similarly, the British lack the military and economic press to maintain substantial influence. Their relevance is waning due to self-induced deindustrialization. The Germans, though once formidable, have also seen a decline in military capabilities, notably under Merkel's leadership, leaving them with little to boast about in terms of military strength. Yes, it seems so. This behavior isn't just foolish, it's exceedingly dangerous, as I've emphasized. Previously, our hand is weak. We lack the military and economic might to engage in warfare. Our position is precarious, and the same holds true for Europe. Engaging in brinkmanship is perilous, especially when dealing with a formidable power like Russia. Their capabilities are evident, especially in light of the Ukrainian conflict, which has inadvertently bolstered Russian military strength. The political leadership's miscalculations have led to a situation where Russia may misinterpret our intentions. Providing potent weapons like cruise missiles only adds to the risk, potentially escalating tensions to a dangerous level. It's unwise to bluff, especially now. We should gracefully step back and allow European powers to handle negotiations with Moscow. Unfortunately, European thinking has been influenced by American perspectives, compounding the problem. I believe that was their initial intention. However, they've realized that their strategy has backfired significantly, leading to a far more perilous situation. This realization likely prompted Scholz's recent statements. He must feel increasingly vulnerable, especially considering the direct warnings from the Russians regarding potential consequences for Germany's actions. The situation has spiraled out of control, yet some figures like Macron and Sunak continue to operate under the assumption of limitless American support, akin to Netanyahu's position. They seem to believe that the U.S. will unconditionally back them in any confrontation with Russia, despite our lack of capability, strength, or power. This renders the current moment exceptionally hazardous, perhaps more so than any other in the past 2.5 years. Yes, indeed, similar sentiments have been echoed by others, including Scott Ritter. The severity of the current situation and our vulnerability have reached such a critical point that even the Army Chief of Staff feels compelled to publicly advise the political leadership in Washington, despite his reluctance to disclose the full extent of our weaknesses. His message underscores the pressing need to acknowledge the growing strength of the Russians, which now surpasses levels seen since In the 1980s, at this juncture, the prudent course of action would be for us to completely withdraw from Ukraine. Failure to do so risks entanglement and substantial losses from which recovery may prove challenging. Putin has exhibited considerable restraint thus far, closely monitoring developments in Ukraine with a deep understanding of the country's dynamics. However, the escalating situation is pushing him towards the conclusion that he may have no alternative but to act. The Russian General Staff is even considering significant military expansion to secure their borders, a response triggered by the perceived threat posed by Western activities in Ukraine. The West's sponsorship of military endeavors near Russia's borders is met with reluctance by Moscow, yet they feel compelled to respond to such provocations. It's imperative for European leaders to grasp this reality, and there are indications that Scholz is beginning to comprehend the gravity of the situation. Absolutely, this aligns with the neoconservative narrative, reminiscent of the events of 1938, portraying Putin as an aggressor poised to annex territories akin to Austria and Czechoslovakia. However, this narrative is fundamentally flawed. It fails to acknowledge that we are the instigators, not the Russians. Our actions compelled Russian intervention in eastern Ukraine, a move they initially resisted. Yet certain factions, including neoconservatives, persist in their efforts to escalate the conflict needlessly. Speaking truthfully in this, the climate is challenging as many Americans and Europeans have been misled into believing falsehoods. However, it's imperative to face reality. The Russians are prepared and serious while we are bluffing with no real capacity for combat. The recent remarks by the Army Chief of Staff underscore this reality. Though his message wasn't explicit, he acknowledged Russian strength without stating our own weakness. Scholz's recent statements reflect a similar sentiment, warning of the consequences of further provocation. He emphasizes the seriousness of the situation and the need to grasp the realities on the ground. While the Russians possess the depth and capability for action, we do not. The sensible approach is to negotiate a resolution, including new territorial arrangements and Ukrainian neutrality, abandoning feudal NATO ambitions. European leaders are undoubtedly concerned, albeit hesitant to voice their apprehensions publicly. While it's conceivable that the situation could extend into the summer, unfortunately, a significant portion of the financial aid reaching Ukraine will likely end up being embezzled. Some members of the House and Senate who have been staunch supporters have directly addressed this issue with Ukrainian officials, emphasizing the need to curb corruption. Despite our financial support, much of it intended for the Ukrainian military and government, billions are expected to vanish, as has been the case previously. This charade needs to end and the truth must be acknowledged. We've effectively lost this war and the consequences for Ukraine are dire. However, there's a reluctance to speak candidly, especially among European leaders, fearing repercussions from Washington. The truth could liberate us from this predicament, but it remains unsaid. While some politicians like Mike Johnson may understand the gravity of the situation privately, they have yet to openly acknowledge it. As for the aid to Ukraine, it will encompass various forms, including the recent procurement of artillery ammunition from South Korea. However, some politicians fail to grasp the potential repercussions of their actions as they persist in advocating for further involvement in Ukraine without considering the possibility of direct confrontation with Russian forces on the ground.